Just a short video on what is normalized power. So if you have a power meter, this is definitely something you should be aware of and be able to understand, or at least interpret, the numbers and the data that your power meter gives you. So in order to do it, I've just written two sessions and I'm going to compare the two, and I think that'll give a good enough insight into what is normalized power and why it's different to average power. So you can see set one here, I've just written it's 20 minutes. You do a 20-minute effort, steady, consistent the whole way through. It'd be something you do on the turbo where you just put it in one gear and don't change. So let's say you do a 20-minute solid effort and it's at 200 watts. Nice and steady for this power rider. And that would give you at the end of it an average power of 200 watts. And it would also give you a normalized power of 200 watts. Okay? Simple, you set at 200 watts, it's all averages, all the same. But let's say then we go on to session two. And this session is broken up into 10 rounds of 1 minute at 100 watts, followed by 1 minute at 300 watts. So over that 20-minute period, you're doing 10 minutes at 100 watts and 10 minutes in total at 300 watts. In that scenario, your average watts in both sessions is going to be 200. They're going to be the same. But doing a session where you spend 10 minutes at 300 watts compared to 10 minutes at 200 watts, say, in terms of intensity of the session, spending that 10 minutes at the higher end, up towards that 300 watt range, is going to be a lot more physically taxing. It's going to be harder to generate that much power, takes more energy, causes more training stress. So in order for coaches to be able to plan, Training Peaks, Strava, all of the big platforms now have a lot of big data algorithms, so they'll get at your heart rate, your power, all of the more data you give it, the better feedback it gives you. But what it will do is figure out how intense the extra watts is for you. So let's say in this scenario, I'm just working from experience here, so I've made a guesstimate with the 250 watts number, but in order to try push the 300 watts and get that extra power out, it's going to be harder. So if you come and you look at these two sessions and you only compare the average watts, you're going to see the same number and you're going to think, oh, well, that was fine. Two sessions were about the same. But what this normalized power figure gives us is how much watts you needed to push for that duration consistently for the same effect. So another way that I could write this session afterwards would be set 2A is 20 minutes at 250 watts. So in this example, we did 200 watts for 20 minutes. Our average here was 200 watts for 20 minutes. But in terms of the stress of the session, the normalized power tells me that this session was the equivalent of riding for 20 minutes at 250 watts. So comparing this one to this one, now where you go 250 watts compared to 200, gives me a much more, it's a clearer and more valuable number to look at to try and understand how consistently you're putting stress into your cycles. So if you're doing your long spin at the weekend and you're thinking, okay, I was told to cycle at 200 watts, you finish your spin and your average is 200 watts, and then it gets 2 days later and you're still knackered, or you've repeatedly been injured and you've managed to get a block of consistent training, you feel like you're doing it all right, and then something goes wrong, fatigue, injury, whichever. Maybe go back and have a look at this, because you could be thinking, oh, my average is at 200, but my normalized might be up at 240, just because the route I go on is hilly or whatever way it is. And this would often be the mark of an experienced cyclist, where their average and their normalized for particularly easy spins would be around the same. Like if you do a hard session, you don't want them the same. But if you're doing easy spins, recovery spins, you do, because you want it to be a consistent effort. So yeah, I think if you have a power meter, you should know what normalized power is and just start to check your sessions, see how it compares to your averages, and learn to use it to maximize consistency and training efficiency. Any questions on it? Give me a shout.